That sound means you're back on the air with the restaurant brokers, Eric and Robin Gagnon. And now we are going to talk about the reality. We've had some incredibly big guns in franchising on the air today talking about the many, many units that they own. So let's talk about the reality of that. Eric, is this something everyone can achieve?
Well, if you are putting the effort into it and are passionate, like Aziz said today, you can. We're focused on, people have developed giants in the industry. They're moving from a single unit to a multi-million-dollar operations with many, many units and various concepts. In the case of Pierre, he had 3 very different restaurants. In the case of Aziz, he's focusing in franchising, but still the same process applies. It takes a very well thought out plan. The ability to replicate without you being there 80 hours a week is very critical.
I love that they both really talked about unit economics, because as restaurant brokers, we have talked to so many customers who just fall in love with their brand. They fall in love with their idea, but unfortunately, the idea just doesn't work. So we say one of the 4-letter words in the restaurant industry no one wants to talk about that we're willing to take on is that F word, fail. And it happens more frequently than you would like, but it's almost like sales. A failure gets you to that next step of what's going to be successful next go around.
Yeah, you talk to people about, people remember their failure a lot more than your success, and you should learn a lot more from your failure and your success. We remember the great times in the 80s, 90s were great times where money was abundant, and people, you open it, they will come. And people thought that was it. That's why I bought a franchise. I buy a Burger King because if I just put the name Burger King on the marquee on the street sign, they will come, and all I have to do is write the check. These days are over. That business have changed. The landscape has changed, whether it's restaurants or any kind of other business. Like you said, you have Aziz talk about having a passion, having something different. Make sure it works for the franchisor or for the franchisee. Well, if you are an independent trying to get into more than one unit, it has to make sense for you, but it also has to make sense for the leaders of your quote-unquote dream team, not to steal our guest's word from today, that it has to work for them as well to have a win-win situation.
And I think what is also very, very important is if you're an independent operator, you're having to both build this brand and build these processes, because you can't be in more than one place at the same time. So you've got to build up over time so somebody else can come in and do exactly the same thing. You have to have that staff in place that can act in your interest and also teach others and duplicate your actions. That's really the key to success. On the flip side, if you're buying other franchises, you're having to also have the corporate level staff to plug and play those franchises well, even because you may be going from Taco Bell on one hand to one of these other Domino's or Papa John's on the other hand.
Yeah, and for those of you that are still with us from the beginning of the show today, if you notice when I introduced Pierre today, he created F2O, Fresh to Order concept, in 2006. And I said he started franchising in 2010. It took 4 years, full-time. The guy that's already done many concepts just to refine that one concept before he started expanding it and work the tweaks out of it. It took 4 years. So when we get a lot of calls as restaurant brokers and say, hey, I've got a great unit, I've been in business 6 months, I want a franchise, I'm ready for my second location, you may want to say, not so fast. Let's really look at this, test this, document things, because that's another thing. If you're not going to be there 80 hours a week, or if everything is in your brain, you're going to need to document so you can share that knowledge and the steps and everything that is required for a second, third, fourth unit.
Didn't you have that situation recently? You're selling a restaurant and the buyer says, oh, by the way, where are the recipes? And the owner says, oh, in my head.
Correct. It was an independent, and we're coming the morning of the closing, and I said, where are the recipe book? He says, oh my God, I don't have one. This is a business that's been in business 7 years, by the way. It's not a guy that's been in business a few months, but never wrote the recipe down. And he had 2 units. He sold one. So again, document everything, build from day one. If our goal is to do something, and like Pierre said, you will know when time is right for your other unit. You will feel it instead of just saying, I need to have 2 or 3 or 4 units. And in the case of Subway, we all remember Subway didn't do very well. They had 1 unit, then they just opened a second unit because these guys just said, we're just in a bad location. They did that 3 or 4 times, and then by the time they had 4 units, people said, hey, it must be good. They have 4 stores in town. But that's really what we say, the needle in the haystack, the 1 out of a million story.
And the thing, too, is to know this. Not everybody is right for multiple units. I mean, it could be that's just one 1, 2, 3 is kind of where you max out, because there are these magic breaking points that we've observed over the years. We worked with a small chain a few years back. They would get 3, 4 stores going. They'd be okay. They'd layer in that 5th store and break to pieces. Then they would back off. 2 or 3 stores would go down. Then they would get 5 back up, and they just never could get past that break point. But I think that what I was very impressed to hear today is that these gentlemen, both of whom are just, towers in the industry, said, don't be afraid to fail. You're going to make some bad decisions, but overall, if you just continue to follow your passion, stay engaged in this industry, the reality is you're going to hit on that thing that will give you the success and that internal satisfaction that you want from the industry. And that's just so much fun. I want to just keep talking about it, but we should probably talk about some listings. What do you think?
Yeah, I want to make one more point to our listeners today, too, that you also got to look at your skill set. You may be a great operator to operate a restaurant day to day and great manager, great owner, but there's a different skill set when you start talking about 2, 3, 4, like Robin said, 5, 10, 12 units. It's a very different skill set. We had customers who were very, very good operators, make hundreds of thousands of dollars in profit into one unit, but they were not very good at running 2, 3, 4 stores. And so, again, if you are in that scenario, make sure that you are looking at bringing people on board with you early on, because as he said that, even if you don't feel like you have the money, you must invest into people very quickly that are going to be able to help you with that side of it. So recognize your strength, your weaknesses, surround yourself early on with the right people that you can have that success into the multi-unit world.
Okay, so just very briefly, and this is another way that you can get started, is you don't have to be the one that builds the brand. You might buy the first location, decide that the last guy was leaving money on the table because he didn't develop it into a multi-unit, and that's how you can actually grow. So here's some examples of listings we have out there that you could take over today that are generating a lot of cash flow. You could invest this into building your 2nd, 3rd, 4th unit. So, for example, in Augusta, I have a wonderful restaurant and bar for sale that's got very reliable sales, steady profits, 6-figure earnings. The revenue was almost $650,000 last year, and earnings of about $127,000. That's a lot of cash to put back into a second location. That can be found on our website at WeSellRestaurants.com. Anything else, Eric?
Yeah, we have a nice little kind of bagel bistro kind of shop in sunny South Florida for you. That is also about 2,160 square feet. That has been there quite for some time. That has a good bones that could be brought up to a larger amount. We know the density of people in South Florida, and they love their bagels, and they love the little outdoor cafes, seating and everything like that. It does have a full kitchen. They make their own bagels, so you have recipes in place. You have things like that. Their sales are in excess of $10,000 a week for a bagel shop. That is actually a very good amount of money and great hours, 6:30 a.m. till 5 p.m. We know down in Florida that people spend all day at the beach mostly, and they are tired by early, so you don't have to work late night shifts. So that place like that's making you some money. It's also offered about $135,000. Again, great bones to develop your sink your teeth into something and grow into a larger volume multi-unit deal.
Okay. Well, I don't even have time to get to the last listing I wanted to talk about. It's a wing store we just listed for about $99,000. So I tell you what, listeners, you're going to have to visit our website for more information. That's WeSellRestaurants.com. WESELL, restaurants with an S.com. You're on the air with Eric and Robin Gagnon. We are the Restaurant Brokers, and we bring you the latest information about this industry every single week.